All right. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining. My name is Iman Maghroori. I'm a master solution engineer here at Salesforce. And today I got a good one for you. We're going to talk about Process Builder. All right. So consider this like an introduction to Process Builder. First and foremost, though, let me just say thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being customers. Thanks for taking time out of your day to come join this live stream. I appreciate your time. I respect your time. And I really want to make this a good use of your time. So speaking of our time together, how are we going to spend it? First, I'm going to explain automation rules because I figure you just don't know how Process Builder works. So I'm going to explain it. Then we're just going to dive into it. I'm going to build some with you and I'm going to show you some real live examples. And then I'm going to give you links that you can use to just install those examples in your sandbox and play with it and at least have something you can work with to help you kind of plant the seed and get it going. And at the bottom of the hour, we're going to open it up to Q&A. Now, look, if you've never joined me before, let me just give you some tips for a good time, okay? One, do not try to click along with me. If anything, watch the recording later, but don't try to do what I'm doing as I'm doing it. I'm going to go way too fast, and, this is not an Iman click along. It's more of a sit back, relax, and prepare to drink from the fire hose kind of presentation. Also, if you have any questions, that's great. Post them in the actual comment section on this video. So there's a comments feed there. Just post your comments or questions, and at the bottom of the hour, we'll do our best to answer them. Also, if you want to download this presentation, that's the link, sfdc.co/process builder live stream. And those words are capitalized, and that does matter. Also, Michelle, if you don't mind just posting that in the comments section for everyone, they can just have it as a link there as well. But that's the link you're going to want to use to download this deck and get links to all those installable things I'm going to share with you later. So that's the link. Outside of this event, if you ever want to ask me questions, you can just go to my Trailblazer chatter group. I normally run a webinar series, and that's where people go to reach out to me directly. If you have an iPhone, just open up your camera, scan that QR code, and it'll pop open to the right page. All right, and last, but definitely not least, I got to sit through this presentation. So can we try to have a good time? All right. So automation rules in Salesforce. What are my options? How do they work? Iman, break it down for me. Okay. All right. Well, so the first thing I should just say is automation is awesome. This is how you are going to scale. That's what the whole point of automation is. Now, I want you to think about the right targets for your organization. All right. So think about things that people do over and over and over again. Think about things people are likely to mess up or forget doing, okay? And think about those things that don't require any skill. They don't require a human to make a decision and really think about it. I mean, every 2 days, 2 days after someone signs up, they're going to get an email. You don't need a person to be involved. They don't need to pay me an hourly rate to do that. Automate it, right? So think about things like logging a voicemail and scheduling a follow-up call. That is something people do all the time, and yet a lot of our customers make it really manual. Let me show you how to automate logging a voicemail and scheduling the follow-up task, okay? Also, things that people forget, not necessarily immediately, but 30 days before a renewal, 180 days after they signed up. If there's time-dependent things that you want to do later on, automation rules are great for that, okay? Also, think about those times you make your reps copy-paste something. Hey, when someone signs up, take this info and fill out that form. There's no magic there. There's no logic or intelligence being used. It's copy-paste. And if anything, someone's going to mess that up. So you know what doesn't mess up copy-pasting? Automation rules. So that's a good way to move data around, okay? And last, just like normal welcome emails, automated replies, we should just be doing that all day. All right, now, when it comes to making automation rules, you should know you got a lot of options. There's lots of ways to do this in Salesforce. Today, we're going to talk about Process Builder. This is a Process Builder stream. That's what I'm here for. And that's what we're going to spend our time on. But you should know these other things exist and kind of what they do. So I'm going to give you a quick, broad brushstroke of these automation rule tools. And, we'll address them some other time. So approvals. This is great where, think about a quote. Before you're allowed to put the quote in the some stage or status that you can now send it out to customers, let's make sure it's approved, right? So you can set up approval processes in Salesforce that lock the record. They don't let more changes be made. And then they can go, from me to Michelle. And if Michelle approves it, it goes to the VP. And if the VP approves it, it goes to the senior VP. And, that's as high as it needs to go in this case, and we're good. And people can even approve or deny in the app, in the mobile device or via email. So while you're in this live stream right now, you could have gotten approval request and just replied approve, and the process will continue on. Okay. Also, there's an automation toolkit called Workflow. For those of you that have been customers for many years, you probably have workflow rules. This is great. They're powerful. Think of this as like the original or the old school process builder, but I don't recommend using these anymore. Not that you have to shut them down, but this isn't the newest feature set. We have a lot of newer automation tools, which is where I think you should be spending your time. So don't build new stuff here, but maintain stuff there if you already have. Okay. Entitlement processes are great for support automation rules. All right. So if you have a support rule, like when a customer is a gold customer, we need to respond to them within 1 hour. We'll have a tech on site within 24 hours. We'll give them chat support if they're a gold customer. Those kinds of entitlements or SLAs you can manage in Salesforce with a feature we call entitlements. And you can set up milestones, and we can run reports on this at the end of the quarter. How many SLAs did we hit? How many did we miss? And it even lets you set up automation rules around, ooh, we're 15 minutes away from the solution proposed milestone. What should we do? Should we escalate the case, notify someone, send an email? What do we do? So this is really good for support time-based issues. Then there's just custom code. You can write custom code for anything you want. And if you say, Iman, can I? And then you come up with a really crazy use case, yeah, okay, you can do that with custom code. So think about all the times where you need something very complex. This is an option. I don't recommend it for most people. I don't think this should be your first choice, but you should know if you want to do something and the standard point and click tools don't let you do it, you can probably just do it with code. But again, that's like a last option. And then there's flow. Flows are the automation rules that are the most powerful. This is a very complex toolkit. It lets you do a lot of things. Query records, update many records, create records, and you can even have screens like wizards on the page. So if you want a wizard-like experience for people to go through, or a widget that you can put on the page and people can fill out like an intelligent form, flows are a very, very good tool. All right, so today, though, we're here to talk about Process Builder, and this is really the good middle ground between creating records, updating records. This is the best combination of easy to use and powerful, okay? So in Professional Edition, you get 5 of these, okay? But each flow can go to many things, or each process builder can do many, many things. So even though you have one process builder rule, it doesn't mean that it can only do one thing. That one rule can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things, or as many things as you want, okay? All right, and so just make sure you use the right tool for the job. In this case, approvals for approvals. Start with Process Builder for pretty much anything else, and if it's too complicated for Process Builder, or Process Builder just can't handle it, then move to flows. But I wouldn't necessarily recommend starting with flows. All right, so Process Builder. Let's jump into it. So every Process Builder needs 3 things, all right? And forgive me 1 second. I hear some background noise. I'm going to get rid of it here. All right, sorry about that, everyone. All right, so you only need 3 things. You need a trigger, you need a criteria, and you need an action. All right, so what does that mean? What object is kicking off the automation rule? When is this particular automation rule going to fire? And then what's it going to do? All right, so, and this thing I always forget, activate it. You can create your rule, but if it's not turned on, it's not going to work. So I'll create rules and then go and test them, and it doesn't work, and I'll pull my hair out, and it's because I forgot to turn it on. So don't be me, turn it on. All right, so let's walk through an example automation rule. Let's say you want to call back a lead anytime the call me back date is filled out. So let's say I call you, and now's not a good time, and I got to call you back. Well, when do you want me to call you back? Call me back next Wednesday. All right, I put next Wednesday into a date field, and that's the date I should call you back. All right, so how do we do it? First, we create a process builder rule, and we're going to start by saying what object it's going to run off of. So in this case, we're going to run off of the lead object, and we're running when records are either created or edited. Then we're going to actually use a custom date field to determine what the trigger is, what the criteria is. So when does this rule fire? So this rule is going to fire when the follow-up date field is not empty, is not null, and it's been changed. So if you put in a date, or if you change the date, and it's not empty, you didn't delete the date, then I'm going to fire. And what am I going to do? I'm going to take an action. And this action is to create a task. Now notice I'm filling out every single field on the task. The task would be created, but it wouldn't have a subject, it wouldn't have a due date, it wouldn't know who it's assigned to, it doesn't know what lead it's tied to. So notice every one of those fields, what the date is, what the description is, who, all of those you have to specify. Okay, so you can't just assume that by creating a task, it's going to know who to assign the task to, when to assign it, or where to put it. So just make sure you pay attention to those details. And in general, start simple. Like you're going to get off this webinar, you're going to be empowered, you're going to be cooking with gas, but don't run out there and make the most complex automation rule you can think of. Start simple. And even if you can think of a complex rule, break it down into its little basic parts and start off with a simple use case. Also, these rules fire pretty much any time the data gets updated. So if you have a data loader spreadsheet, if you have a spreadsheet and you want to load it through the data loader, and you load 500 opportunities, and you have an automation rule that fires when an opportunity is created, it's going to fire 500 times. Now, I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's going to send an email. I don't know if it's assigning a task. I don't know what it's doing. But you need to make sure you turn off your rule if you don't want it to fire when you load data. Okay? Also, automation rules can fire when you're not expecting them to fire. So you want to be really careful about the criteria. Otherwise, they might automatically do that thing when you don't mean it to be doing that thing. Okay, so getting your criteria very fine-tuned and focused is important. And last, but definitely not least, don't do this in production. Put it in a sandbox, right? Test it in your sandbox, then recreate it in production. The last thing you want to do is really send emails send emails to customers, or really create a bunch of tasks that you didn't mean to, or were dirty, or didn't look right. So test it in your sandbox. All right, and for tasks, use this later on as like a appendix for yourself, but these are the fields you pretty much need for a task to be created, right? If you use the name ID field, that's for contacts or leads. What contact or lead is this task related to? The related to ID field is every other object, accounts, opportunities, quotes, everything that's not a person, you use the related to ID field. If it's a person that you're relating that task to, use the name ID field, right? And then the other fields hopefully make sense. And the due date, I just recommend using formulas. You're not going to want to put an automation rule that says every time this happens, the task is November 7th, because November 7th is going to pass and all the tasks are not going to make sense. So use formulas like this task is due in 7 days from now, or this task is due 30 days from the renewal date, something like that. But use formulas for task dates. All right, that's the slides. Let's get into it. So I've got my automation environment with 5 different automation rules. We're going to build one together, and then we're going to walk through the other ones just in the interest of time. You don't have to see me start from scratch on all of them. All right. Let's go to my lead object. So I'm going to go to a lead record. Here I've got Armando. All right. Now let's see. He's got nothing on his record. There's nothing here. So let's do the call me back one. So I'm going to show you the call me back automation rule, and then we're going to make a brand new one from scratch together. So I'm on the phone with Armando. Hey, Armando, now a good time? No, it's not a good time. You paying attention to the news? This is crazy. Call me back in July. All right, okay. July it is. Hit save, and that's it. Call me back reminder set in July. So how'd that work? How do we do that? Let's start with this real basic one, and then we'll build one from scratch. All right. So I'm going to go into setup. I'm the admin, and I can create stuff. All right. And you could, from right here, just say workflow process. I don't like how we name this because this just takes you to process builder. Or on the side here, just start typing process builder, and you'll notice there's a process automation section. And this is where all the different automation stuff lives. But we're going to go to process builder. That's what we're doing today. All right, here are my rules. Okay, so let's take a look at the remember to follow up on a lead automation rule. Now notice there's versions in here. So you can only have one active version of a process at any time. And these are the mistakes I made beforehand. And then when you have it working the way you want, you make that one active and the rest go inactive. Okay, and now that this is my active rule, I can't change it unless I save it as a new version. So I could copy this and save it as a new version, but every time you activate one, it kind of freezes until you create a new version of it. All right, so here's my workflow rule or my process builder rule. It works on leads whenever a lead was created or edited, not just created, but edited as well. And it looks for that follow-up date, right? So if the call me back field is changed and it's not empty, then we're going to take some action. And the action we took is we're creating a record, and the record we're creating is a task, and we're defaulting all the values in there. And that's what you just saw. All right, now, what about the voicemail one, right? So what if someone comes in here and goes, Iman, I want to log a voicemail. I've already made it really easy. Notice I made it really easy, one button to log a voicemail using this action, okay? But what if you want an automated follow-up when a voicemail happens? That's when things get really cool. So let's create that together. So I'm in Process Builder, and I'm going to create a brand new rule. So I'm going to call it voicemail follow-up, okay? And I'll say stream, so we know it's for the stream, because I think I've done this a few times. Stream. Here we go. And it's going to fire when a record changes. It could have been fired by another process builder rule. It could have been fired when another system made a call to Salesforce, but this is the most common use case. Well, what am I paying attention to? What object am I looking at to make sure this rule fires? In this case, it might throw you, but I'm actually looking for a task record. That's what a voicemail record gets logged as. It's a task. So I'm going to go ahead and create a process builder rule on tasks. All right. Only when the task is created or when it's edited. I'm just going to say when it's created. I mean, when you log the voicemail, you're not going to go back and edit it later. This is when you create it. Okay, so create it only. Great. Well, is it just going to fire all the time? I mean, what if I create a task for a demo or a follow-up appointment or anything? I don't want it to just keep creating follow-up calls all the time, so we need a criteria. So did I log a voicemail? Now you can call this whatever you want. The criteria name is just so this logically makes sense to you. And then it's going to fire when the criteria is true, or when your formula is true, or when it's just always going to fire. In this case, when the conditions are true. So here I'm going to look for the subject of my task to be voicemail. If you create a task and you call it a voicemail, I'm going to assume you logged a voicemail. Now, I could do more searches like make sure that the status is complete, make sure the date is today or in the past. You could get more granular with your criteria, but for this demo, I'm just checking to see if it's a voicemail. Great, so it's a voicemail. What do you want to do? You want to send an email in 2 days from now, 2 days before or after any other date field or whatever. So I could leave you a voicemail and you can automatically 2 hours after that voicemail get an email from me that goes, hey, Todd, sorry I missed you. We'll call you back later. We just automate that and pick the right email template and be done, right? In this case, what are we going to do? Notice there's a bunch of actions. We could fire code. We're not going to do that. We're going to create a record. That's actually what we're going to do. But email alerts, launching flows, posting to Chatter, launching another automation rule, sending notifications. These notifications are these little bells that you get here, and also push notifications on the mobile phone, which is really nice. Or you could force the record to be submitted for approval, or you could even update the record itself. So there's lots of things you could do. In this case, we're going to create a record. All right, what am I going to create? I'm going to create my follow-up task. So what am I creating? I'm creating a task. Okay, so these are the required fields. So who is it assigned to? Now, I could just say anytime this task is created, make it high priority or normal priority or whatever. But what if I want to use values from the task that launched the rule? Well, that's this field reference thing. With the field reference thing, you can say, look, I don't know who we should assign this task to. Just assign this task to whoever owned the other task, or assign this task to the lead owner, assign this task to the opportunity owner. So if you already have a value in the system and you want to kind of dynamically fill it in, it's these field references. So here, I'm just going to say, go and get me whoever the task was assigned to. So the voicemail was owned by somebody. Make this follow-up owned by the same person. It's high priority. The status is not started. Let's do the date. The date equals what? What are we going to do? We can do a formula, right? And I like something like make the date today plus 3 days. Call them back in 3 days. All right? What else though? If I stop right there, you'll never see this task because I never associated it to anything. I never linked it to an account or a person. That's why I'm using this name ID. So now I'm going to say make this associate to the same person that we called, and also make it associate to the same records that the call was for. So now this task is linked to the same thing that the other task was linked to, but 2 days out. And we're just going to have one more thing here called subject, and we're just going to call it callback. There you go. I think I got all the records. I think I got all the fields in there. Activate. We're doing it live, so I might have missed something. But there we go. So now when Armando logs a voicemail and we hit save, look, there's the callback scheduled for 2 days from now. Okay? So that's how that works. All right, now let's do a couple other ones that I have, and I'm going to go through these much quicker. So let's talk about escalating a case. Okay, so in this demo, we've got a support ticket. We've got some customer issue. Here's one. We're just going to call it a customer issue. When something happens, we want to notify the whole team. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to change the status to escalated. So if this case is escalated, what are we going to do? All right. And in this case, I'm going to refresh the page. And you should now notice, what did we do? The case was escalated, so tasks were assigned. You saw how that works. But we also @mentioned a chatter group. We @mentioned all of the, let's say, support managers, right? So think about a big deal that might go into, red or be risky. Think about a competitive situation. You have an opportunity, and the rep says we're competing against, XYZ. You can have the XYZ competitive team see it and jump in and help out. So think about the right people you want to notify. Chatter is a great way to do that, right? So real simple way to just do a chatter notification. All right, well, I've got a couple on opportunities as well. These are kind of crowd pleasers. Here's one I call the push counter. This deal's supposed to close today. And I know it's supposed to close today because the close date is today. But we call the customer, and given everything going on, they're not going to buy today. So it's the 23rd. So I'm going to hit save. So this deal pushed once. All right, and then I call them again on the 23rd. Now maybe next week. All right, now it's pushed twice. Oh, well, I talked to them, and it might actually come in a little earlier, so I'm going to move it in. It did not push. It pulled, right? And then now, you know what, guys? I'm sorry. Just now is not the time. Move it to April. Okay. Now 3. Now, notice every time I push it, that push counter increments by 1, right? So now if you're a sales leader and you've got an opportunity pipeline, you got your pipeline report, you're looking at a deal, how likely is it to close? I would argue it's not that likely depending on how high that push counter is. You've got a rep that doesn't know how to qualify the deal or can't negotiate properly or can't just close it, but there's something going on that keeps making this deal push out over and over again. And we actually have a lot of sales managers that'll take a report like that, average it out by rep, and then we can start saying things like, Iman, you push deals 20 times. Samantha, you only push them once. You're great. Iman, you need Samantha's help, right? So good little insightful thing there. Here's another one. People always ask for, how do I run a report on the last activity? We got an opportunity. We've got a sales team. And our sales managers just want to see the last thing that happened on the opportunity. Well, reports and dashboards don't do that. Reports and dashboards don't just filter the last thing. They don't do that. So you would see all the tasks on an opportunity or all the tasks within a week or within a month, but not just the last one. So here I've created an automation rule, right? So let's take a look at this one. This time, whenever I log a call, and it doesn't matter what it is here, we'll just say discovery call, okay? And I give it save. There we go. The discovery call was saved. And you notice the last date was the 16th. All right, now here, let's do another one. I'm going to come in here, say the subject was FollowUp. The due date is the 20th. Now it's even later. Okay, give it some other fields. There you go, right? And whatever those details were inside of the task, we could copy over to the last activity details as well. So let's look at the push counter and the last activity counter. Well, you know what? Might as well just finish up and show you the approval process as well. And here's one for an approval process. So this deal's got some dollar amount. It's $10,000. $10,000 deal, great. No discount. We don't want a discount. We don't need a discount. We're really good salespeople. So when we submit this thing for approval, it can just be automatically approved. Hey, if you're not asking for a discount, approved. You don't even need to waste my time or wait for it, right? But I don't know, if you're doing a 90% discount, I don't feel good about that. I don't think we should automatically approve that. So when you submit that for approval, notice we could have automatically denied it, okay? Which we probably should have in this case. But notice now it's going to step one. Now it's been routed to the next person in line. In this case, it's all just me. But the next person in line, and you as the rep can see I'm in this stage, and I'm waiting for someone else to follow up. Okay? Now let's look at the push counter process builder rule. So how did the push counter work? Well, with the push counter, I've got an opportunity whenever it's created or edited. So anytime it's updated, right? I don't only want it to work once. I want it to work all the time. Did it push? So notice I'm using a formula here. And you can actually use some really interesting formulas like prior value. So one of the functions you can use in the formula is compare the value that someone changed it to the value it used to be. Notice I'm checking the new date against the old date. If the new date is greater, dates being greater just mean later in time. Dates being less than something means earlier in time, so before or after. So if it used to be a certain date and the new date is later and you just changed the close date, well, then this rule's true and we're going to do some stuff. And what are we going to do? We're going to just increment the counter. And I actually have two different scenarios here. One where the counter is empty the first time and it's empty, so I just set it to 1. And then the second time where it's not empty, and then I just take whatever it was and add 1 to it. So I just do push counter plus 1. That's how this works. So just keeps adding plus 1 over and over again.
Hey, Iman, could you just wait a tick after each step that you do? Because I think for some of us at home, I know for me, there's a little bit of a lag.
Sure.
So, yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Here, I'll even open it up so we can click into it. And I figure most of the questions are going to be diving into this anyway. But here's my task. Here's my criteria. And one thing I'm doing is I'm checking to see if this task was related to an opportunity. So only fire this rule if there's an opportunity that this task is related to. So I can tell that by looking at the prefix of what the task is related to. That's a kind of an advanced maneuver there. But what am I doing? I am taking the activity date and just moving the task activity date into that activity date. I'm moving the description field of the task into the details. So if you put your notes in there on what you talked about, that would just go into the details field. All right, and with a few minutes left, I'm just going to go back and show you one more, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. So let's say the push counter. No, we did push counter. We did last activity, escalate case. Here we go. And you can see it takes me a couple tries to get these right as well. I don't nail them on the first time. So starts when a case is created. I check for the status to be escalated. And then we take some action. And in this case, I'm doing a chatter post, a post to chatter. And notice I'm mentioning a chatter group. And that's all there is to it. All right, so I'm going to open up to Q&A. Before we do, let me just finish out this deck. So you'll all get the ability to install those automation rules, those process builder rules. But do me a favor, these are not official process builder rules. If you log a case with support, no one's gonna know what you're talking about to help you with this. So please be cool. Don't make me regret giving you automation rules. Install them in a sandbox, test them yourself, feel really good about it. And then when you feel good about it and you know what it does, then put it in production, okay? I made these as examples, not as ready to go, fully robust, no problems at all. You should put them in your environment. These are more just ways to get you to think about it, okay? So download the presentation. The link to it should be in the comments. And then I've put a link to each and every one of these things that you can install into your sandbox. Please put it in your sandbox, all right? And I've got a real live demo environment called the EDO for everybody's demo org. If you ever want to play with Salesforce that's pre-configured and has a lot of features ready to go, if you want to see like a healthy example of Salesforce without having to set up any features, that's a good place for you to go. We've got things like CPQ, Maps, Dialer, High Velocity Sales, Einstein all set up in there. So no prep, just log in and play with it. Also, if you need help with some of this stuff, there's no shame in it. I have a partner, Wiser Spread, that offers 2 hours of free consulting if you say Iman sent me. So let them know that Iman sent you and get 2 hours of help, whether it's automation rules or something else. And I've also included some links that'll help you dive deeper into these topics after this event's over. So there's trailheads you can go into. I also did a webinar on flows that I think are a pretty good introduction. If you're a little intimidated by flows, that might be helpful.
Hey, okay. Iman.
Yeah.
For a little portion there, your picture-in-picture was blocking the criteria in Process Builder where you add the criteria. Would you mind just walking through that?
Sure.
One more time?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Well, so I'm happy to walk. So now, I'm done with the presentation anyways. Is there a specific criteria people want to see or a question we want to jump into? I'll just take my picture off the screen for now for everybody.
Okay.
Michelle, is there a question from the audience?
No, just was from Jerry. We did hear that he couldn't. Your picture-in-picture was in the bottom right, and that's where the Process Builder steps are built.
I'll happily show. Yeah, I'll happily show any criteria. Is there one that Jerry wants to see? Because all the criteria are different depending on what you want to, when you want it to fire. So I'm happy to show one.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything from Jerry, but maybe if you just walk through the very last one that you did.
Sure. I think it was escalate case. So in this case, in this instance, when a case is created or edited, I've created a criteria. When the conditions are met, so it's just fields, when the fields equal something. And in this case, I'm using the status field. And I'm just saying when the status is escalated. That's it. So this one was really simple. However, one that was more advanced was like my opportunity one, right? So for this one, this is the one where, actually, no, let me find it. There's one where we did push counter. There we go. This is the one where the criteria is really different, right? So this is a formula. This is like a more advanced formula. Whenever this formula is true, then the actions are going to fire. So in this case, if the opportunity close date changed, did it change? Did someone just update the close date? Yes or no? Okay, yeah, they did. And the old value of the close date was earlier in time than the new one. The new close date is later than the old close date. So if you just changed it and you made the close date later in time, this formula is true. And if it's true, then your deal pushed and we're going to update the push counter. And if it's false, then your deal didn't push and we go on to the next thing. Now what you're seeing here are really simple automation rules with one object, one criteria, and it ends. But you can have many, many, many of these branches here. So if it didn't push, you can check something else. Are we ahead or behind the competition? How big is the deal? What territory is it? All these things can have their own separate actions that they take. Any other questions or any questions at all?
Yeah, Jerry would like to see the actions for the one that you're on right now. Could you go into that in a little bit more detail?
Yeah, all right. So for the opportunity. So we've got the opportunity. And what are the two actions I'm taking? Here, I'll clone this as if it's a new version so you can really dive into it here. So I'm going to say the first time that this counter got updated, what am I going to do? Now, I could have eliminated the need for having two of these if I just defaulted that counter field to 0. If I default it to 0, then it's 0 for every opportunity. And then I can just add 1 to it and we're done. But in my case, I did not default the field to 0. So I need to make sure that I give it a value that very first time. If I don't give it a value, it's empty. It's not 0, it's empty. And you can't add 1 to empty. I know it's weird, but that's how that works. So in this instance, if the deal pushed, then I'm going to update the opportunity. All right, well, am I going to update all of the records? No, I'm only going to update the opportunity if the push counter is empty. If the push counter is completely empty, just set it to 1. Look, if the deal pushed and the push counter is empty, then it should be 1. So that's kind of what I'm doing here. And then I've got another action that says, all right, well, we're going to increase the, now we've got it equal to 1. It's not empty. The push counter has some value. Now we're going to update it to 1. Right? So now I'm just taking that one push counter and adding 1 to it. That's all I'm doing. I'm using a formula, taking the existing value, adding 1 to it, and that's what the new push counter equals. So that's how every time we look at an opportunity and I move the date back.
That's great, Iman. We have another question. How do I update the opportunity owner to a new opportunity owner?
Great.
So maybe you could just build one more action onto this. You know, if the push gets to 5,
sure,
we need to send it to a
So how do I? All right. So how do we change the opportunity owner? All right. Well, so you could normally do it just by manually doing it, right? But how do we automate that? All right. So let me just create a brand new process for that. Why not? So change owner. Okay. We're going to start all the way from scratch. Now, when are we going to change the owner? I'll say let's change the owner whenever I set this number equal to 10. If you can't close this in 10, we need somebody else tackling it, okay, or something. So this is going to fire on an opportunity record. When the opportunity is the thing that's changed, this rule is going to fire. And it's going to fire at some point during the life cycle, not just when the deal is created, okay? So let's add a criteria. When to change owners. All right. And again, you could have all kinds of criteria, formula driven, just do it all the time. In this case, we want a very specific thing. So I've got a push counter and I'm going to say, look, if this push counter is greater than or equal to 10, we're going to change the owner. If this deal has pushed over 10 times, we need someone else to carry it over the line. All right. So now what are we going to do? We're not going to create a new opportunity. We're not going to post to Chatter. We're not going to fire another automation. Well, what are we going to do? We're going to update this opportunity. So change owner. We're just giving this a name so in the future people know what this does. Well, what record am I updating? You could update the opportunity itself, okay? Or, for example, you could say this opportunity is attached to an account. Go up to the account and change the account owner. Go up to the account and then change all of the related cases. So this is an interesting way to do something like if we have a deal and the deal's over $100,000, make sure we take all of their open support cases and make them high priority so they have a great support experience while we're selling them a lot of stuff, right? So you don't just have to update the record you're looking at. You can go up to other relationships and modify other records. But in this case, you just want to change the opportunity owner of this opportunity. So, okay, we choose this opportunity. Now, look, are we going to update the opportunity no matter what? Or are we only going to update the opportunity if certain conditions are true? In this case, we're just going to update it no matter what. So what field are we going to change? And that is owner ID. So that's the field we want to change. Okay, now here's the thing. You can't just put someone's name in here. Putting Iman is not how you change it to Iman. Every user has a user ID. So Iman here, Iman has a user ID. See that? That's how we know exactly which Iman you're talking about. Now look, in my case, there's probably only one Iman Maghroori, But in your case, there might be 7 John Smiths. So which John Smith? You don't use names, you use IDs, all right? So let me just get any other user ID just so I have someone else to assign it to here, and we'll fill it out. So I'm gonna go get my users. And there's lots of ways to get user IDs, but let's get one here. And I'm gonna literally pick anyone at random once my screen loads. Actually, I want to find one that I can really use. you know what? It doesn't matter. Right now, I'm for reasons that I don't want to get into, I'm just going to pick, let's say, Iman again. So I'm just going to pick Iman. It's fine. Okay. Iman. And I'm going to manually just change this owner to somebody else right now. Do I have anyone? There we go. Tim. All right. So Tim currently owns it, and we're going to have it reassigned to me because that is my ID. Okay. So when an opportunity is created or edited, whenever we hit 10 or more, we're going to change the owner to Iman, or, you know, in your case, whoever. And then don't forget to activate it. Okay. So there we go. And now I'm going to change the push counter to 9. I like to live dangerously. Nothing happened. Now we're going to make it equal to 10. And look at that. Iman's the owner. It worked. Anything else, Michelle?
Yeah, that was great, Iman. Gustavo has a question. Should processes on the same object be built within the same process as different nodes? I'm not sure about that.
Yeah.
If yes, what's the difference between stopping between nodes versus moving to the next criteria?
Great. So there's a best practice. We want to make it easy for you to administer Process Builder. So it is a best practice. If you only have one Process Builder rule and all of the stuff you do on opportunities is here, then it's going to make life really easy for you to debug issues, right? So imagine that you just walked into an environment where someone else had Salesforce and they set it up. And something happens on opportunities. You know, you make a change, you change some number, and then the opportunity owner changes. Like, wait, I made the push counter 10 and the opportunity owner changed. Where's that coming from? So if you go to the Process Builder area and you have 100 different Process Builder rules, it's going to be really hard, or harder at least, to know what does what. Why did this thing happen? But if you try to simplify and just have one Process Builder for each object, you know, all my opportunity stuff is here, then it would be easier for you to administer, easier to manage. That being said, it can be a little harder for you to design. It can be a little harder to architect. So though that is a best practice, I wouldn't make it a hard requirement. I would strive to simplify my automation rules, but if you're racking your brain on how to add that extra one node to this Process Builder rule, I wouldn't let that hold you up. Just get the rule live, get it active, and then later figure out how to merge it in. But if you don't even think about this, if you don't take this into account, you're going to end up in a place where you have 55 separate automation rules that all fire on opportunities, and it can get weird to debug. So now, all right, let's say that that's the case. All right, you've got an automation rule, and you want to have multiple steps. So what is that? What are we talking about there? Well, so in this case, let's pretend this opportunity owner thing. Should we change owners? Yeah, then change owners. Now, you can just stop entirely, okay? Okay, it'll just stop here. This automation will stop and not do anything else. But now we're going to add a new criteria. So let's say something like competitive update. So for example, you might have a field called, are we ahead or behind the competitor? Who's the competitor? Why are we ahead or behind, right? So you might want to do something different if you've got a deal over 50,000 and you're behind the competitor, do stuff, right? Okay, so in my case, you'd put some conditions in here, and I'm not sure I have competitor fields. Oh, here we go, competitive status, behind the competition, and the dollar amount is greater than 50,000. Okay, so this is another example automation. All right, so now you've got two things. And again, you could do 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 things. All right, and in this case, I don't know, we'll just make it do anything. I'm just going to say update a record just to have it do something. And it doesn't matter what we're going to pick in this case. So I'm just going to pick anything. Okay, so automation fires, it checks this criteria. If it's true, go here. If it's not true, go to the next one. And you can reorder these, right? So you can choose the order that they're evaluated. And then this is the thing. You can say, look, when you take this action, stop processing everything else. You hit the first one. When you do this, don't do more stuff. Okay? Or you can say, hey, maybe we do need to update the competitive status, so do that. And then, check the next thing. Should we change the owner too? And it'll go from here to the next one, and then also check here, right? So it's like a big flow chart. Opportunities edited. Should we update the competitive status? Yes. Do the thing and continue. All right. Should we change the owner? No. Just skip all this and go down, right? That's how that works. Hopefully that was helpful.
Excellent. Thanks, Iman. So we have a last question for the day. It's Brittany Benson Townsend, and she says that her company makes outbound calls using a campaign. It's important to know who made the call so that they can report on how much order revenue resulted from the caller's effort. It seems like reporting is limited on the campaign member object. What do you recommend to best attribute revenue to a campaign member status and who updated it?
Well, so I'm not sure why you're attributing revenue to a campaign member status and not a campaign. So traditionally, you put a bunch of people in a campaign. That campaign has campaign influence or campaign attribution tied to an opportunity. So it's not by status, it's by campaign. And then, all right, so someone left a phone call. What I would do is you're logging calls against contacts and leads. You're not logging calls against campaign members, right? So I call Brittany. So my activity is against Brittany. Brittany happens to be in a campaign. So that's the way I would probably report on it, is just the tasks and events on contacts and leads. And then I would use a filter or something on the report to say, only report on the contacts or leads in a campaign, but also get me the tasks associated to them. So Brittany, without too much more detail, I'm not sure I can perfectly answer that question, but you wouldn't be doing campaign influence by status. You would be doing it by campaign anyway. So I'm curious what you're trying to measure other than phone calls or regular tasks. So
she says it's because members could be reviewed and not actually worked. Let's see if we can get some clarification on that.
Well, so you might have a campaign member in a particular status. That's fine. You want credit for who put them into a status. Okay.
Iman, she did say that that she got what she needed.
Oh. Well, hold on now. I'm actually coming up with a third option. I'm going to answer something. So here's one. Campaign members, you can add a custom object to it. So maybe you add a text field or something, or a lookup field to it. I think a text field. I don't think you can add a lookup field to campaign members. Let's try real fast. Some objects are a little special. But what you could do, let's see if you can. I'm not sure this is perfect, but it's an idea. Let's see. You can add fields. Can you add a lookup field? You can add a lookup field. Can you add a lookup field to users? I think you can. User. All right, so here's what you can do. You can add your own custom field called person who, I don't know, updated the campaign member, right? Use a name that makes sense for you. But you can add a lookup field for this is the person that put them into that status. Then you can have a process builder rule that says, was this campaign member put into the reviewed status? If it was, put the name of the person that just made that change into that field. And then you now have a field for each person that was the reviewer for that campaign member, and you can report on that. It's a little different than logging calls and activities, but you can do it that way too. Hope that helps. All right. Well, look, any other questions, Michelle?
No, that's it. I actually took Brittany's as the last one because we are 15 minutes over, which was excellent. Lots of extra information. So I will put this live stream recording on the support YouTube